Peace. This is Jamal Robinson with 720astrology.com. Today's date is February 8th, 2024, and the time of recording this is 12:18 p.m. Central Standard Time. I'm here to discuss the upcoming new moon, which is tomorrow, February 9th, 2024, at 20 degrees Aquarius, which will happen at 4:58 p.m. Central Standard Time. A lot to discuss about this new moon, but I'll be as brief as possible. Let's go to the chart, I'll pull it up, and we can look at the key aspects that will form. So let's look at the key aspects that will have occurring at the time of the new moon, again at 20 degrees of Aquarius. First thing we have is that the sun and moon are still involved in a square to Uranus. Now that square perfected on around the 8th, but here on the 9th, we are still feeling the effects because it's a tight aspect here. It's only 1 degree of difference in the orb. Sun and moon are at 20 degrees. Uranus is at 19. So what might that spell? Well, Uranus is electric. It is sudden change. It can be erratic. It's rebellious. It's the maverick. It's innovative. It can be like a tower moment. With it being in hard aspect to the sun and moon, maybe we could liken this, especially around this about the sun. We can liken this to the radio sitting on the edge of the tub, or the wet finger that is stuck in the socket. You know, when I was a little child, those were things we were always warned about. Don't get in the bathtub with a boom box sitting on the edge of the tub. Oh boy, that dates me. And to not take a wet object and stick it into an outlet because there was danger of being electrocuted. We could kind of look at this aspect between Uranus and the sun as an electric type of charged energy where it's almost like frying a circuit. One thing we may want to look for around this time, maybe there are some type of scandal pops out with a celebrity, some surprise about a celebrity. The sun is associated with celebrities, and Uranus is associated with surprises. On the world stage, because Uranus is in Taurus, want to keep our eyes open about things involving resources, things involving food, money, home prices, the real estate market, things around those nature. Is there any news that comes out about any of those areas? Another hard aspect we have is that Mercury is approaching a perfected square with Jupiter. There's the aspect between Uranus and the sun and the moon. And here's the one between Mercury and Jupiter. Now, when Mercury and Jupiter get together in a hard aspect, like a square, we may see exaggeration. We may see things blown out of proportion. We may see an inflammation of the ego. It can be one's ideas or one's philosophy being forced on someone else or on people. This may be a message that comes across via media or news that is exaggerated, blown out of proportion. And you know, some of these things I touched on with the video I did about the Super Bowl, because the Super Bowl happens just 2 days after the new moon. And a lot of these aspects will still be in play. By the time of the Super Bowl, Mars will be closer to Pluto. So that's going to intensify. But for the most part, most of these things will still be in play through the 11th. Other hard aspects we have Venus, which is the planet of love, relationship, resources, harmony, beauty. It is in Capricorn, and it's in a hard aspect to Chiron. Let me erase this other stuff. So Chiron is in Aries, and for people around my age, we are approaching our Chiron return. And so we're born in the generation where Chiron is in Aries. And so part of this can play out as difficulty or a need to establish one's identity, to be secure in who I am, to heal the wound of not having a strong sense of self. And for my generation, we are labeled as X, which we were already labeled with the tag of being unknown. And I'm not so sure that it was happenstance that a great deal of us born in Generation X have our Chiron in Aries. So maybe Venus here in a square to Aries, and it has already passed its perfection, but it's still within a 5-degree orb. So we're still feeling it here at the time of the new moon. So maybe there's a strain on relationship. Maybe there's a strain on finances. Maybe we're having difficulty in matters of love and difficulty feeling secure. To add to that, Venus is in a semi square to Saturn, which Saturn is also the dispositor. Venus is being received by Saturn and it's in hard aspect. So maybe we're feeling limits. We're feeling walls, feeling like we're being squeezed, feeling like we don't have many choices. But the thing about hard aspects with Saturn is that it requires a lot of determination. It requires steadfastness, even in the midst of feeling like you're being restricted. So there's a lot going on here at the time of the new moon. And a new moon is what? When we sow, when we plant seed. And that can be literal, but it can also very much be metaphorical. We're initiating, we're taking action. We have the intention of something growing. So you got all these challenges here around growth. And it makes me think about the sun when it's at the winter solstice, how that sun is working to grow, to recover. And after it passes through the solstice, it's going to start gaining strength. Like right now, okay, it's February, but my children have noticed that the days are getting a little longer. It's 5:30 and it doesn't look like it's like we're in a cave. Like the sun's still up. It's 6 o'clock and the sun is still trying to hang around. So if we pay attention, the sun is gaining strength around this time of the year, but it's having to overcome the angle between Venus and Saturn is the equivalent of the crescent moon, which is that 45-degree range where the light is fighting to be seen. What has been planted is now fighting to sprout because once we get sprouting, the next step is growth. So there's this fighting for life. And this energy is surrounding this new moon, this seed planting stage. To support the growth, we have Venus in a trine to Uranus. Now, growth requires a charge. If we just think about the human body, it is electromagnetic. Without the electric spark, the heart cannot function. That's why we take electrolytes. When we're low on electrolytes, it places the heart in danger. Phosphorus, sodium, magnesium. These are electrolytes that are necessary to keep the fire, the spark in the heart, keep it pumping. We need a battery in our car to provide the initial spark for the engine to even crank. The engine's like the heart of the vehicle, but it needs an electric spark for it to function. So it's like Jupiter, I'm sorry, Uranus here is providing an electric current, a charge to Venus. Now we want to be careful that we don't allow that to burn out, that we don't run rampant with this charge, but take it at face value as what it can do, how it can be of service and be beneficial. It's a spark. It's a charge. It may be some sudden illumination. It may be an idea. It may be some type of awakening that we need to figure out how to balance. And that balance is naturally coming from the universe because we got hard aspects to Venus. And so the balance partly may be to not be overcome by the struggles that may be currently visiting us at the time of the new moon. In other words, don't forfeit the birth. just because Venus is in hard aspect to Chiron, where self-doubt may creep in. Venus is in hard aspect to Saturn, where we may feel like we got every odd against us. And it's like, God, I overcome one thing, I gotta overcome this. And it's like I got another mountain I gotta climb. But the universe is fair. So with all of that, we still have this spark that comes in that's giving us a little extra push right now. And of course, this is not perfect on the new moon. It perfected I don't have it right, but it probably around the 7th or 8th, but it's a 2-degree orb. So we're still feeling the impact of Venus in trine to Uranus. Another help is the fact that the sun and moon are in sextile to the North Node and Chiron. Once again, this is not a perfect aspect. They have already passed where they were perfected, but it's still in range to where we're still feeling the effects of the sun and moon, sextile Chiron, and the North Node. In other words, get over ourselves, get over our fears, get over our that idea that may be swirling in the head of turning back. Fear may be a thing that's creeping up right now. So it's about being courageous. The North Node is about moving into territory that is kind of uncharted, which denotes a degree of courage. So it's about courage. It's about courage in the face of obstacles. Obstacles that may naturally make you want to throw the towel in, may allow doubt to creep in. These are things that we naturally have. Fate would have it that these bodies would be positioned at this time to say, hey, yeah, you got some challenges, but you still see where you're going. Follow the light. Keep moving down the road. Don't go tuck your tail and be scared and fold up. Keep moving down the road. The sun and moon are in Aquarius, which is futuristic. It is innovative. It goes against the grain. So it's telling us that whatever this seed, whatever this intention we have right now, to not worry about the fact that it may not fit into a mold, it may not fit into a ready-made system. Keep moving, keep looking down the road, even in the face of doubt. And with that in mind, I want to come back and talk about the hard aspects. Venus, semi-square, Saturn. As great as the opportunity may be, there may be some initial barriers requiring determination. Here's the thing I wanted to say about hard aspects as it relates to Venus and semi-square to Saturn. Venus square to Chiron. The sun and moon square to Uranus. Mercury square to Jupiter. You'll read in a lot of astrological literature that squares, especially, provide energy. And we're going to expand that to say that squares, semi-squares, and sesquiquadrants, they all involve some type, they're all based on the square. A square is 90 degrees. A semi-square is 45 degrees, half a square. And a sesquiquadrant is a square and a half square. So it's 135 degrees. All of those create an energy. But what does that mean? What does that really mean? I'm even going to add the opposition in there. I think the opposition creates energy, or the opposition requires energy. Maybe we should say it that way. But let's put all those hard aspects together. What type of energy is being generated and how? The energy is based on the archetypes involved. So if we got the sun, moon, and Uranus, then we have 3 archetypes. Uranus is the archetype associated with Prometheus. It is illumination. It is a sense of rebellion. It's the maverick type of energy. Prometheus was not supposed to give fire to man, but he did. We have the sun, which is the will. Will is an archetype. The will to be seen, to shine. That's the sun. It's a sense of self. The moon is the archetype of vacillation, up and down, flow. It's water. It's the archetype of the flow of energy that we call emotion. It shows us that energy does not just sit still, it moves, it transitions. We have Mercury, which is the archetype of expression, learning, travel. These are archetypes. Jupiter as the archetype of joviality, of larger than life energy, of a grand philosophy. These are archetypes. You've got all of these at play. Venus, the archetype of love, all of these at play. So when we have hard aspects between those, energy is generated around those archetypal expressions. In addition to that, this energy filters through the signs that these archetypic expressions are in. It then filters more into the houses. So, in other words, to understand how they're expressing, first, how does the archetype express at its base, at its root? Meaning, how do those planets in that handout I created about how to read your chart, I look at the planets as verbs. They're moving stars, wandering stars. We learn that a verb is action. So we look at the planet as action. We look at the sign as an adverb. The adverb modifies the verb, okay? Or it describes the verb. And then the house is like a noun because noun is what? A person, place, or thing. Well, the house is a thing, it's a place. And so when you know your time of birth, your place of birth, you can then cast a chart and then you know what place are the archetypes expressing in and what signs, as in how are their expressions being modified within those places. That's where the energy is being charged. So let me give an example so this just isn't confusing. Mercury is an archetype of expression. Jupiter is an archetype of expansion. Now, when those two are in hard aspect square, like we have here, then the nature of each can clash. We have details clashing with some grand idea. So maybe details may get blurred out because of a stance, an opinion, a philosophy. We have things may get blown out of proportion. The communication of Mercury may be inflamed, blown out of proportion by Jupiter. But because energy is being charged, energy does not have a designation as I choose to be this way, I choose to be that way. Energy just is. It is just the infusion of potential. Now, although it's a square, we have the opportunity to extract something from the square that can be useful because it's just energy. Now, the energy that we can extract that can be helpful from, let's say, the square between Jupiter and Mercury is that it makes us hungry for knowledge because maybe something's been crammed down our throat, maybe something's been forced on us, and then the actual challenge becomes the answer. Remember this with hard aspects. The challenge they bring up is also the answer. So if you feel like an opinion is being crammed down your throat, then with Mercury square Jupiter, then the exploration of the deeper exploration of the opinion or the philosophy or the details is where the truth is found. If Venus squares Saturn, or it's in semi square to Saturn, and Venus is feeling caged in, limited, controlled, then that challenge, the energy that is directed or generated through that challenge, can be best utilized by exploring the actual feeling of the limitation. In other words, what is the limitation highlighting? Where do I feel limited? Because in the limitation, I also have concentration. When something is concentrated, it has been squeezed. And when it is squeezed, it is most powerful. When I was a little boy, we used to get those we used to get the concentrated juice in those little cylinders. And you would take it and it would say, add water. Why? Because it's concentrated. This thing has enough power to make maybe a gallon of liquid or fluid or juice, but it has been concentrated down into this little cylinder. So Saturn sometimes through its taskmaster overlord type of energy can make us feel helpless. by putting force on us, squeezing. But if you know anything about weight training, the squeezing and the constriction and the tightening of the muscle is how the muscle grows. The energy that is infused through the archetypes that are involved, the signs they're in, and the houses where all the activity happens can actually be channeled through a form of alchemy into something that works in your favor. How do we know it's true? Because you sit down and you go over people's charts and you see people a lot of times who have, let's say, a hard aspect with Saturn. It builds a degree of determination. I have Saturn directly opposing my sun in my chart. It makes me uber determined because you having to fight to overcome something. Saturn is time. So in addition to limitation and constriction and restriction, it can be a time element. So I've always felt like I've been behind, started playing football later than everyone else. And everybody else had a CD player. I was still riding around with a tape deck in my car. Just all types of different areas of life, just feeling late. But because of that, it has allowed me to learn things faster than other people. I don't need the same amount of time that the average person needs to develop a degree of mastery in something. That's the gift of Saturn. The restriction that it has created in my life has made me uber determined because this restriction comes between my third and ninth houses. It gives me the ability to learn things faster than the average person. So it energizes hard aspects, energize us to lean into them. And at this new moon, we're going to have to lean into these hard aspects. There's a lot of determination that's going to be required for this seed to grow. There's courage. There is assertiveness is required. It is getting to the bottom of things and being sure to be detail oriented and not accepting someone else's philosophy or someone else's truth. These things are required with this new moon. It's also required our circuitry be prepared to receive, to be electrified, because Uranus is squaring the sun, and Uranus can fry a circuit, but just as much as it can fry a circuit, it can be illuminating. It can be a sudden moment of illumination where a light bulb just, and remember, that electric charge coming from Uranus is charging Venus. And in this chart, Venus is the lead planet and Uranus is the trail planet. So with all the hard aspects that go on in between, the lead planet and the trail planet are in harmony with each other at the time of this new moon. It's a very concentrated sky. The whole sky is concentrated between Capricorn and Taurus. It's a very tangible, hands-on type of energetic phase here. It is, what can I make earthenware out of? What can these hands, what can they create? What can they build? So that's pretty much it in a nutshell, what I want to say about this new moon. It is a time to, as all new moons are, there are seed intention moments with the new moon, but we look at the aspects surrounding this new moon to see what are we going to be having to overcome for this seed to grow. And there are some obstacles here around this new moon, but we also have some gifts. We have opportunities and we have vision of perception and perspective. Perception is the ability to see what's around us, and perspective is the ability to see far down the road. And our challenge is to not let our perspective be sullied by what we see immediately right around us. For private readings, I'm available through my website, 720astrology.com. Know the stars to know yourself. Peace.